this Fireblade engine going in our K-Track. Welcome back to KM Builds. In the last episode, we announced this Fireblade engine going in our K-Track. If you haven't seen that, go make sure to check that out.
So in today's video, we're going to be touching a few different areas on the truck. First thing on the list, we're going to be trying to get a list of things we need to get this engine running. So the plan for this is to basically try and get this started outside of the truck before we put it in. So what we're going to do is get this on a tidy board, try and build a bit of a frame to hold it up in the upright position, so make sure all the oil's in the right position. So let's get this mounted to a board.
So we've managed to get the bike engine onto a board, basically. Pretty secure. The only issue is the table's a bit wobbly.
Yeah, it's probably worst of our issues, the table now, more than anything, but at least it's safely ready to start work on it.
Yeah, so the plan now is I am holding the loom. It's a bit of a mess. Not sure who wired it, certainly no one with eyes anyway looking at it.
We have picked up a Haynes manual. Everything you can see is online, but it's handy just to have this. It has all the coloured wiring diagrams, every nut and bolt, torque specs. Just handy just to have this, just to give us an understanding of everything. If you haven't had one before, it's basically a go-to guide for your car. You can get them for all sorts of cars and all that.
Yeah, they're sort of like a 101 really, and anything you need, you can get them for a variety of cars, bikes, stuff like that. So Ken managed to pick up the one for the Fireblade for us.
Yeah, so it should be helpful. So ECU, that came with the engine actually, and like this piece, for example, don't know what it is, but I'm sure that it will tell us what it is in the Haynes manual. So what we're going to do now is just connect as many of the connectors we can find on the loom to this as possible. Figure out what's left. There'll be a few connections which we'll probably be left loose with, like that rubbish that Matt has just showed. And then whatever ones are left, try and figure out what they are using the book, and try and get a list of maybe connectors or anything that we need to get this running. So let's plug it all in. So we've made a bit of progress so far, plugging a few bits in. Some things are starting to make sense now. So some of the things we plugged in, we figured out this is a regulator rectifier, so that plugs in, and the ECU. We also have the coil packs plugged in. I think this is going to have to be grounded. There's a few plugs as well. We're going to have to figure out what's what. Still random bits. There are a few bits which we've found which are just extra that they look like they've made for the kit car. There is an extra piece as well which was made, but looks like we don't need that. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking at the diagram, figuring out what plug is. So take this one example, trying to find what colors are what, and figuring out roughly where on the diagram this and then is labeled. So we found that all the yellow ones, so this one here goes to the alternator, and then on there shows how you need to plug that in.
So it's been a successful couple of hours. We've spent a bit of time, hopefully you would have seen, in terms of going through the loom and basically just adding labels to everything. So for example, you know, ignition here, things for lights, things that we won't necessarily need, but it's good to understand them and know what we need to be working with and not really. So hopefully this will make it easier as we progress through getting the engine in the K-Track.
Yeah, so for bikes, there are a lot of little things which you need switched on or switched live in order to actually start a bike. Things like the clutch switch, so the neutral switch, so you have to make sure you're in neutral before the bike will even start. So now that we've done this, we'll be able to jump between pins on wherever we need to, clutch switches and all that, to try and get it to start. We have come up with a list of things that we need to get by looking at this. So a few things we've looked at. Battery is probably a fairly obvious one, but I've question marked that because we don't know if we're going to be able to run the the ACTY battery, which will be bigger, or we're going to have to stick with the bike battery, so that's going to have to take a bit of research. The starter relay, that didn't have one, we figured out that was missing. Same for the oil pressure switch, and then general service stuff, oil, filters, spark plugs, and we're also going to get a battery terminal to go onto the battery, but that depends on what battery we decide to use.
So now we're aware of everything we need. The plan will be to order everything in so that we can get this started up and understand what our next steps are with the engine.
Now we've done everything we can on the engine, now we're going to look at the rear subframe and all the arms. As you can see, they're a little bit rusty, but there's nothing major that we can't sort out. First thing I'm going to do is dismantle them all, so we need to figure out if there's anything we need to order to start to look to get this into the truck. The nuts on what was left of the drop links were ruined, so I had to break out the hacksaw just to cut them off. So I'm having a bit of an issue getting the drive shafts out and the lower bolt that goes through the bottom of the hub. So I'm putting some WD-40 on it, and while that soaks in, I'm going to crack on with the main subframe. The only thing on these is the upper control arms, and there's a few brake lines left on, so I'm going to get them off. Should be easy enough, I hope. These were the easiest pieces to remove, just 4 nuts and bolts, and they came off with no problem. We also did find that we do have some brake lines left, but we may replace them for braided lines in the future. The lower arm and the drive shaft was still proving to be a problem. We even broke out the sliding hammer, but still had no luck. So as the drive shaft isn't coming out, we might have to just take the whole knuckle off completely and try and get the drive shaft pressed out on a press. But that moves on to the next issue, which is this bottom bolt. So there's a bolt which goes right through the bottom arm, through the knuckle, but it seems like it's seized in these 2 bits here, as you can see. So that's the main issue, is I can't get this long bolt out. So I had that issue on my car as well, but it wasn't as bad as this. A few bits of hammering and it came out. I'm going to soak this in WD-40 over the next couple of days to hopefully allow this to come free. But in the meantime, I think I'm going to get the wire wheel and give this a bit of a once over and see how it comes up. I can't see it coming up entirely, but we'll cross our bridge when we come to it. So I've given it a once over with the wire wheel, but it's not coming up as I was expecting. There is a lot of rust left in the pitted texture. The bits that have corroded more than others leave this pitted sort of texture, and you can't quite get the rust out. So it's not as clean as we want it to either powder coat or have it sprayed. Otherwise the rust is going to come back through eventually. So we need to make a decision now as to which way we decide to go. We have options like sandblasting, but that leaves another pitted texture. You can get nylon beads, I think it is, which is the same as sandblasting, but less harsh. But it's going to be expensive to have each of the parts blasted, and then if we decide to powder coat, we're going to send that off as well. So we need to come up with a solution which is easiest. One of the options is maybe to get a rust converter solution. So that we'll just get a big vat or tub, fill it with the liquid and the rust converter, and then we can leave them in overnight, and it should help a lot. We still are going to have to wire wheel a lot of it to get the excess rust off, but that should save us a lot of time and money, because then we can reuse the fluid for all the parts. We have got a lot of parts left to come off the front when we start to visit the front of the truck, so they'll need doing as well. So me and Matt will probably have a think now as to see which route we decide to go down. It's kind of balancing how much it's going to cost versus how much we can do ourselves. One, we want to obviously make as much content for you, so the more we can show you and make it more relatable. If you wanted to do these things at home, the cheaper we can make it for you, the better. Obviously, if we had all the money in the world, you just send everything off and be blasted and then coated. But this is being built on a slight budget, keeping it as cheap as possible so that you can do the same. So that will probably be it for today's video. We've had a fair bit of progress on the engine and the subframe. We have yet to move on to the shell, which that will be coming very soon. We would appreciate any feedback, comments, or anything like that, to give any suggestions, maybe things like how to restore these. If you've used any of the rust converting solutions, let us know what ones you've used. We also have a couple of shows over the next month or two, so make sure that if you are new here, you drop a subscribe, and we will catch you in the next one.